KNAC.com, the loudest.com on the planet. It is May 2020. I'm here with Mark Menghi. Did I say that right?
You did.
Awesome, awesome. And Bobby Blitz, the one and only of OverKill. How's it going?
Hey, Francisco, how are you, man? Good to hear you.
Likewise, man. Hanging tough there. How are you guys doing with this whole unique situation we have going on in the world?
Well, I'm out here in New Jersey. I mean, I'm probably 50 miles from New York City, so I'm not in one of the hot spots. I'm in more of a rural area. So on a personal level, sure, stuff has changed, but I'm riding my motorcycle, doing some music, trying to reinvent myself like I think most of the world is at this time. Yeah. And being resilient and hopeful at this point for great outcomes for all listeners and all the rest of the world.
And unlike Bobby, I am in the middle of a hotbed here on Long Island in New York. But yeah, it is what it is. But healthy here and keeping busy and dealing with Blitz on a daily basis is always fun and keeps me entertained.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we're here to talk about BPMD, which is an acronym. Do you guys want to tell us what the acronym stands for?
Yeah, bipolar mental disorder. That's what you got to be. That's what you have to be in this band. No, I'm joking.
It's quick.
That's clever.
It's Blitz, Portnoy, Menghi, Demmel, a la CSNY, Crosby, Stills, Nash Young, ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, BBA, Beck, Bogart, Appice, keeping with that 70s, that vintage theme of acronyms or initials or however you want to put it.
Right. You're carrying on the tradition not only in music but in name as well.
Yeah, at least that was the initial idea. I don't know if we actually succeeded in that.
Yeah, I bought into it right away. I mean, the whole idea of the record was sure it was a modern day presentation, but the idea was supposed to be recorded like a record from the 70s. It was supposed to be presented like a record from the 70s, right down to the name, right down to the artwork. So sure, man, I bought into that whole thing. That was a great time travel for me, like a departure from the current day back to my youth.
Yeah. Now you guys are really digging back into the vaults for like some of these songs that you guys are putting out.
Yeah, it's funny when this started. It was an idea from an 8-year-old, and we took an idea, formulated it over a 1.5-minute time frame, seriously. And then when I was speaking with Bobby about, hey man, it would be kind of cool to do something like this. And then he started mentioning bands whom I love, Mountain and Cactus in particular. It was like, yeah, let's do American bands. Let's do 70s American bands. Just kind of, because again, I was sitting in the backyard, barbecue, fire pit, the great American tradition, if you will. And that music's great just to chill out and relax and listen to. And we just kind of developed the idea. And, we didn't purposely, it's funny, we never said, make sure you don't pick any hits. Make sure you don't pick the classics. It was just subliminal. It was just, we all picked our songs and they all happened to be not the famous songs. And, which is good.
Yeah, the deep cuts are always like, it's weird. Like they're underappreciated, but at the same time, like there's such a large appreciation for the deep cuts. So I'm looking at the set or the list of the songs here. You guys picked some outstanding jams, man. Especially the one that stood out to me. A favorite song of mine is "Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers."
Oh, awesome! Yeah, and that was one of my that was my second pick. First one was Saturday Night Special because that was the catalyst for this. But Beer Drinkers, I just thought that it's a very simplistic song that ZZ Top did beautifully, and my idea going into it was how could we open it up using this simple approach. And Phil singing lead, Bobby singing lead, Portnoy going bananas, Phil's guitar playing is amazing. And it was just, it's kind of like our little version of a little thrash jam metal band, nice. Like Allman Brothers on steroids. It's kind of,
there's something cool about rock and roll from this era too. Yeah. And I think that the number one rule is don't overthink it.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
hear,
Oh,
when you hear
totally.
that from like from Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, it's not an overthought song. It is the capturing of a moment, and that's
Hmm.
what makes that song outstanding. So to actually be in a situation where we're able to reimagine what somebody else actually imagined at one time, and be able to do it justice or capture it, rethink it our way in our moment, gives it legs, I think, to even other listeners in the current day.
Well, ideally, you're hanging out, beer drinking with your buds and stuff like that, and it's just good music to just vibe to.
As Phil
And
Demmel says, it's great to mow your lawn to.
nice, nice. You can only mow your lawn so many times though in this current state though.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And now then you start looking at your neighbors. It's like, hey, your lawn looks like it needs a little bit of mowing there. You mind?
Just lend them the BPMD record.
Yeah, totally, totally. I'll go to town on that. Yeah. And Bobby, what were the songs that you picked on this one?
I picked "Never in My Life" by Mountain. That was my first choice. It was something in the Overkill camp that had come up, probably half a dozen years ago in an airport somewhere in Eastern Europe. That would be a good song for us to cover, and it never came to fruition. But I remember when we were speaking about it, having coffee, my mouth was watering, saying, "Man, I can't wait to get my hands on this." And
Nice.
but it never happened. But it always stayed in my head that I gotta have a chance to do this song. So when Mark called me that fateful evening last July, I think I was spitting out the title before he was even done telling me the idea. So that was my first, and my second one was by Cactus, the song "Evil,"
Mhm.
which is actually a '50s blues cut from Willie Dixon, recorded by Howlin' Wolf. So it was reimagining the
Howlin'.
reimagined. So that was kind of cool, and being able to keep some integrity to Cactus's presentation of it, but do it with with Demmel's updated sounds, Portnoy's approach, Mark's walking bass, and some gritty vocals like the Cactus version had. I was really happy with the outcome of that.
Awesome, awesome. And were these a lot of these bands that you guys had picked? Were these typically your influences growing up, among probably tons of other influences? But like, were these the ones, the standout ones to you?
Not me, no. As far as influences growing up to what got me playing to what I do is completely opposite to Skinner and ZZ Top. You know, it was later in life that I really started diving deep into Skinner and ZZ and James Gang and bands like that. And now, I don't want to sound like it, but as I get older, that's what I find myself listening to all the time. It's as much as I love Bonded by Blood and the Wrecking Crew and all those records, it's just that when I'm home and I'm doing my thing and listening to tunes, I'll put on a James Gang record. I'll
Nice.
put on a Skinner record. It's just kind of where I find myself listening, but within that, you listen to the musicianship, and that's what piques my interest. Is, man, listen to the tones they got back then. How did they record
Hmm.
that? Listen to this dude's bass playing. It's unbelievable. What is this? How did they do this? What gear they, and that's where I dove deep into the education of late '60s and '70s rock, if you will, and it became a huge, huge, huge influence to me. But it wasn't initial.
But what's funny about that, just to take it a step further, and as much as Mark is like a student of the era, he had to go back into the '70s, being born in the '80s. But when I was growing up, these were songs that I was exposed to. I would say almost every one of them at one time or another. I'm sure I've heard every one of them. I haven't performed every one of them. But when I was a kid, riding a bicycle, walking to school, walking home, hanging out with friends, some of these cuts were on. Uh, or I'm singing them in my head, one or the other. So for me, when this project came up, it was like this whole mental time travel thing of going back to
Hmm.
something I actually already knew, or at least had experience. So I mean, let's say it was a welcome, fun departure for the summer of 2019 to go pretend I was 15 years old again.
I was gonna say, yeah, certainly a flashback. You're a kid, and you're like, wow. You're like all these memories of like probably walking to high school or something, or I guess 15, what, junior high? I don't know. And then
You know,
listen to your little Sony Walkman, your cassette deck right there. Just like,
Jesus.
that's what I did.
It's
You
called
know,
Florida Walkman.
I had the ugly Sony huge Walkman with the stupid headphones, and you know, I lived by that thing, and I had the Skinner cassettes, like Street Survivors on cassette. I had that when I was younger, and yeah, I had all that stuff, and you know, and again, to take it even further now, if you listen to like the bass player of Skinner back then, Leon Wilkinson, you know, the dude's phenomenal, the criminally underrated bass player. And if you listen to those tunes, so I, you know, like Bobby said, I became a student of all those bands, and the technique and the groove and the recording process, and you know, it became a huge inspiration for me.
totally, totally. And the one thing that we point out is like the sound back then, organic is the best way to describe it, but at the same time, it doesn't describe it enough. Whereas, versus now, modern day technology, it kind of it's taken over, and I think a lot of bands, some bands maybe I guess struggle to get that organic feel, right? While
I
others they kind of embrace it.
I agree.
I much prefer. It's funny, when we were mixing our record, I kept telling Mark Lewis, I was like, dude, listen to these records, listen to these songs, listen to how they're mixed. Don't touch it. You know, I prefer that warmth, and that's what it is. It's the warmth. It's analog. It's tape. It's that's what you're hearing. You know, everything's digital now. Everything's digitized, and everyone's accustomed to listening digitally. Spotify, Apple, whatever it may be, computer. But you know, it's hard to get that sound because it was all done via analog, and a lot of that equipment doesn't exist anymore. And if you do have that equipment, you're going to pay a pretty price to maintain, run it, operate it, and record on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to take that just a step further, I think you have to embrace technology to stay current. I mean, you know, when push comes to shove, I'm in a thrash band, and it makes it possible and easy in this music industry climate to make high quality thrash records with, let's say, an old school analog mentality, but still embracing the modern versions of Pro Tools. But when we did the BPMD record, you know, the idea was, you know, from the name to the artwork to the presentation, it had to capture that vibe. And I think why it did was, even though recorded digitally, the idea was we started jamming like bands would jam back in the 70s. You know, somebody's blowing a riff out, somebody's got a beat going. And the next thing I know, we're into the songs that we had rehearsed prior to the session. And about 20 minutes, 30 minutes into that, somebody said, hey, let's roll. You know, let's press record and see what we get.
Record.
So then, you know, 10 hours later, all the drum tracks are done. So much like the 1970s, where record budgets were, especially for some of these bands, were just, you know, 3-4 days in the studio, 5 days in the studio, a week, something like that. It had to be one and done. And that was what we strive for on this record. And I think that energy kind of came through. So though not recorded organic, approached with, let's say, an organic mentality.
You know, just a quick story. Leonard Skinner, when they were doing their first 2 records, they locked themselves in a shed on a swamp in Jacksonville and practice for hours upon hours upon hours. They went in to record with Al Cooper, if you know who that is, and he was kind of the producer, signed him to MCA Records. They recorded those records literally soup to nuts within a day or two, all instrumentation. Mm-hmm. It goes to show you the musicianship that you have to put in behind, and they didn't have the budgets or the time back then. And I think that's the beauty of it, is you really practice your craft. And that's what you get from those recordings is, you know, stellar musicianship.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pressure cooker, you know, like a lot of people deal well with under pressure, and musicians, I think we have a knack for that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You know, especially pressure. You know, I went into these recordings not knowing what the hell I was going to do. You know, I didn't chart nothing. I didn't write nothing out. I just went into it. I knew the basic songs and a basic notes, and I hit record, and I was like, let me see what I could do, and that's how I recorded it. Just having no pressure, but on the flip side, having the pressure of got to come up with something kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and you being the young blood here, like I mean, it's that alone is a lot of pressure. Like you're working with all this amazing talent, and
Elderly statesman, as I call him.
Older. I'm also the wisest one in the band.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, Bobby, you've been going at this for what, over 35 years, man. You've certainly seen like a change in tide from decade through decades, and if you were to step back and just see yourself like, like you were saying, 15-year-old you, and through, the break of the new millennium and now to where you have arrived, kind of what's your mindset? What do you think about that?
Well, the motivation never changed. I think that becomes the constant. And 15 is a perfect age to pick because it was my first real concert, and that was
Nice.
was Queen
Oh,
on their
wow.
second American tour. It was a headline. It was at a place called the Capitol Theater in Passaic, 3,000 people, and it was a sheer heart attack record. And by 2 songs in, I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't want to be
Nice.
Freddie Mercury, but I wanted that energy. I wanted that energy, and
Right.
and I think that motivation has never changed. But the changes that do happen around what the motivation is. The way you record, the way you tour, the way the business has changed, the way recording has changed, et cetera, et cetera. So to take that journey and still have that same hunger that I experienced at 15, that's what is what becomes the fuel to the fire.
Totally. Outside of music, I mean, the world influences alone, those definitely have us.
Bobby is like my Obi-Wan.
Oh,
Yeah,
My
very
old
good.
Obi-Wan, man, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Come on.
Who?
He's like the older. He's like the older Jedi that's kind of been crusting away, but has all this wisdom, if you will.
Or we could keep it evil and we could say Emperor Palpatine.
Or you
what
could
I
say
mean? Go-
Palpatine.
what's this crusted away BS? I mean, I'm this whole band is out on a motorcycle chasing girls.
That's
That
all
hasn't
right.
changed.
You know what? Now I'm going to compare you to Yoda, a little green person running around.
that overkill green. Hell yeah.
Overkill green.
Hey, there you go.
Yes, nice. Again, it's KNAC.com. We're here talking to Bobby and Mark of the new project, BPMD. It's would you consider it kind of a little bit of a spin-off to the Metal Allegiance stuff?
Metal Allegiance certainly was the catalyst because it's where we all know each other from. It's where the chemistry came from. Whether it's Mike and I in the studio writing, Bobby and I co-writing and jamming live, Phil and I playing live. Phil's the stage right partner in crime for me. So we all, at least for me, I developed that chemistry with everyone through MA. So you could consider it a catalyst. I wouldn't say a spin-off.
Because you guys had previously worked together on the second album, Metal Allegiance 2, and was the song Mother of Sin, right?
Bobby and I did, yeah.
Yeah, and that's fun for me. That was a departure out of Overkill. It's really only the second time I've been out of Overkill over this 3.5 decade journey that we've been on. And it was something fun. It was almost vacation-like. And, I like remembering why I started doing this, that motivation I talked about. And sometimes you need a refresher course, and it's to be creative with new people sometimes. But the working with Metal Allegiance gave us that kind of a chemistry. The band already was gelled prior to going into BPMD. I'd been on stage with Mark and Mike. They've been on stage together a bunch. Phil Demmel's been Mark's partner in crime for years, here and there on stage. I've played with Phil. So there was something already happening. And I think that you can tell by, guys like Mike Portnoy, who was a student of all types of music, and Mark Menghi, who loves his 70s music, and Phil Demmel, who loves all sorts of music, that something was going to come out of this that was going to be special, that was going to feel successful.
And right now I'm in the middle of a Motown kick, so I'm all over the freaking map, man.
So the next BPMD is going to be a Motown cover.
Uh,
Or take it the next step further. Just go jazz. Might as well just go full tenure.
I leave that to Alex Skolnick, man. He dabbles in jazz land.
Bobby, now going back to Overkill, you guys had just recently released an album too. Like, how did you feel the success? Because it's barely a year old, and Wings of War. Like,
Yeah,
tell us about it.
it was it was a good run for us. We kind of got cut short by the world situation, by this pandemic, in the last of the touring. But we had done almost a year plus on and off. It seemed to be accepted at a high level. It was our 19th studio record, and still to me sounded fresh, which is, I think, one of the most important things, that it's not just about what we were, but still about what we are. That we can still present something on a high level in the current day. I mean, and that's where all my pride is. I mean, with whatever I do, it's about the moment. So, hey, great that stuff existed in the 80s, but to still be doing it in 2019, like with the Wings of War, and have it accepted at a high level, and playing the full houses, that that there's still value in the current day, which is extremely motivational.
And were you guys like at the end? Did you complete your tour circuit, or were you guys still like kind of in the midst of it all once this pandemic kind of closed things down?
Yeah, we lost. We only lost 2 shows. We lost coming up on the East Coast in Silver Springs, Maryland. Then we were going to do a hometown or a home state New Jersey show at a place called the Wellington Theater in Montclair, New Jersey. So we got most of our dates in. Our summertime dates have been canceled, and that would have still been Wings of War. So what we're doing is, we're just using the time to kind of, stretch out what we would normally do for a record over a 2-year period. It's going to be more like, 2.5 year period. So we're going to have more time to work on whatever the next release is. And we're about 9-10 songs into the demos at this point.
Oh, right on. Did you guys have any like thoughts about, putting this on the road as well?
Yeah, well, we were supposed to do a festival show, not a festival, but a benefit big outdoor benefit show for our first gig in 2 weeks, actually, or next week. I forgot the date of it, but yeah, we were supposed to do that. We had intentions on doing European festivals, specialty shows, things of that nature.
So all this like kind of been just put on hold now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard that we have different schedules, and once everything kind of gears up, by being part of the scene, that people are dying to get out and do shows again. That's what we do. People that are fans of the music are dying to get back and see shows again. Oh, obviously, you want to do it safely, but the point is, it feels like it's been taken away from us, and I think and we've said it. We've said it in other interviews. This is a resilient country, man. We come up with great ideas when the chips are down. We figure our way through problems. It's one of the great things about America is its resiliency. And I think it'll be back. It may be different when it's back, but it'll be back. And I think what comes out of these bad times are moments of strength that give you hope for the future.
Definitely creativity comes out of it. That's for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I hope to God that people are using this time. At least musicians or artists, or those of like that are heavily into art, that taking time to like do something and use that influence to create something positive. Because like you guys said, man, once the doors fly open, hey, everybody's gonna want to go out to their favorite concerts and see these favorite bands, and the bands are like just grinding their teeth because they want to hit the stage just as much as we want to see them.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding.
That's for sure. And unfortunately, I just don't know if it. I just don't, see it. And I hate to be pessimistic. I just don't see it within even in the next year or so. Just given how sports are going to resume with no fans in stands for a season.
Right.
If they follow that format, festivals, concerts, venues, etc. I mean, who the hell knows? What do we do? Play in a hall with no fans to ourselves? You can't do that, musicians. And so I don't know what the hell's going to happen. I just hope something gets, a little bit better very soon.
Hey, bro, you're the young guy in this conversation. You're supposed to be the optimist.
Now it's called being a realist.
Sometimes being a realist is difficult, man, because we see things that we don't want to see, and it's hard to be optimistic. But man, because you take away the fans, you take away a big part of why you love doing what you do.
Well, yeah, you also have to understand that this is a community. I was brought up in the thrash metal community. I was part of it. I'm not aside from it. I was a fan before I was the guy who sang for OverKill. I found my way around a microphone over the years. I didn't just say I'm going to do this because I had to be a fan of it first. And I think that that's one of the strengths that we have as a genre, metal in general, is that we're all fans of the stuff we play, and we're all just like the audience. All we are is an extension of them. And I think that somewhere from there comes the great idea of what the future brings. Hey, man, maybe it doesn't happen in my lifetime, but for sure it's going to happen in somebody else's, and probably both of you guys. That stuff is going to be back, and it's going to be back, and it's going to be strong. Maybe different, but it'll be strong.
Totally. And this is going to be one of those times where everything has to really come together. It's a community, you said. Community is a great word. Metal brings us all together. And in times like this, man, you guys put out a record like this, and all these great, amazing bands have been putting out great records. Like, now we have the time to sit at home and just throw that record on and, crank it to 11 and just, hey, what else can you do?
Let you know who you are.
Oh, totally. Totally look into yourself and see what's going on in your head, and you got to keep, and
hey, man,
mental health is just so, I was just going to say mental health is just a real important thing right now.
Yeah, good point. I think people are in situations that are different from them, but hey, the one thing to remember is that we've all are in that situation, and it's not, I think it's isolation. I think when people think in terms of isolation, they think of singular. But it's really not. It's all encompassing, to some degree. And we see things opening up all the time. And these are the great signs of hope. But nobody's in this alone. We're all in it together.
Thrash metal being what it is, we talk political, we talk about antisocial politics and stuff like that. But this is definitely, the current state of things is definitely going to give you some influence to writing lyrics, right?
Oh, I would think so. I think that we're in a position right now to document it, and I think many people will. I'm not going to say necessarily myself, but I think many people will document, what happened here, and that's the way it should be.
Again, we are talking with Mark and Bobby from BPMD. That's Blitz, Portnoy, Menghi, Demmel, the new Supergroup spin-off, or not a spin-off, the sequel to Metal Allegiance, and they have a new record out, or actually will be coming out soon, called American Made. You said you guys had done this like in a short amount of time, right?
Well, yeah, drum tracks were recorded in a day, and then what we did was we took those drum tracks, and everybody tried to kind of reinvent or reimagine those parts, but still keep the integrity of the song. So they still keep the integrity of the song. So so the point was, if we had drum tracks that were recorded in one day, we had the perfect foundation to build on top of that with single takes. Sure, you go back and you do a second or a third take, but Mark, for instance, was telling me he tried to keep everything as a one take thing. That it might have been the third take, but it was played start to finish, no cut and paste.
Right. That's a good way to go about things, man. That's what I've been trying to do these days, with like the limitations that we have of not being going into a recording studio. You gotta do it one take. At the same time, it's like, that's how you do it live, man. There is no like, oh wait, hold on, let's do it again.
Yeah, man, you're 100% right. And there's something beautiful about that live experience, because it's catching lightning in a bottle. It's spontaneity. It's risk. It's meaning succeed or fail. In this moment in time. So I think that's what's exciting about this record, is that it has that kind of vibe to it.
Totally, you describe it well, man. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time. Mark, if you're still there, this question goes out to both of you. Kind of open it up to you guys. Any kind of words of encouragement, any things that you want to tell people during this current pandemic state?
Well, I mean, we touched on it before. You know, we're in this together. We're resilient people. You know, and it is a community. So I think that if you're in that headspace, that's not great. I mean, you know, go back to the basics. You know, reach out, talk. It's going to change, and it's going to change for the better. Hope is what we have right now, and I'm totally on board with it.
Very good. Mark, are you there? Do you have any words to share? I think we lost Mark, unfortunately.
I cut him off.
Well, when you touch base with him again, give him a high horns and a salute for me, and thank him for his time. And thank you, Bobby. It's an honor to talk to you, the voice of OverKill. Over 30 years of just bringing thrash, and you guys are amazing. And Mark, did you want to chime in? I don't know.
Yeah, no. If you could hear me right now, I could hear you guys clear as day.
I hear you now. We hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Just to answer the question from earlier, for all those listening or reading, get out of the house. Don't stay in the house 24/7 during this, because if you do, that drives the mind crazy. And at least for me, getting out of the house and doing things, you know, other than music or what you're working or normally doing, it's definitely important to keep the brain active and going, for what I find, at least. And and I appreciate the support. Love KNAC. You know, DJ Will is one of my good friends. So
shout out to DJ Will. Hell yeah, right on.
Anything for you guys.
Oh, much love, man. Right back at you. Yeah, KNAC, man. We're supporting the scene and always will be here. And much love to BPMD, Metal Allegiance. You guys, thanks for putting this out. We look forward to hearing it on June. Again, this is Francisco with KNAC.com. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at MetalXCandy. American made through Napalm Records, BPMD, Bobby Blitz, Mark Menghi. Thanks a lot for you guys' time. You guys stay safe out there, and horns to you.
Thanks, Francisco.
You too, dude.
See you, man.
See ya.